Okay, not the slides I was expecting, never mind. When Jen asked me to talk today on the subject of collaboration and security, it's an easy sort of theme to warm to. And that's because generally in the security domain, we're pretty good at collaboration. And it's worth taking a step back and wondering sort of like, why is that the case? So the easy answer is to think, well, it's altruism, it's for the greater good. But knowing what I do with security people, I suspect that's not the real answer, and it's far more likely to be self-interest. And this is the issue with security. Everything is interconnected. What security people know is if one of you goes down, they all go down. And when you're securing complex systems, it's very much like playing a game of Jenga, and where these various collaborative activities are essentially various ways of reducing the risk of the entire tower falling down and collapsing around you. So I'm going to talk about this collaboration in sort of like 3 tiers: collaborative processes, collaborative engineering, and collaborative intelligence. So collaborative processes, as John intimated, are the easiest, and this is almost like the current working practice. And within security, we have security best practices, technical architectures, vulnerability disclosures, vulnerability databases, incident handling, and even the most recent sort of like software build of materials is another example of how the community is coming together in this process-oriented fashion. So within the Many Secured project, which is looking very specifically at the issue of security from the gateway perspective, this is the glue that holds everything together, we are making some moves in this direction. Most recently, we formally announced something called GCert, which is the Gateway Certification Program, which is implementing a lot of these sort of best practices, moving to certification, which is going to uplift the general security in that space. But I think the much more interesting stuff is at the lower level. So I want to talk a bit about collaborative engineering. So what do I mean by this? What I mean is the detailed, complex engineering problems as one system interacts with the other. Good old-fashioned security systems engineering. And within the IoT context, I can give you a very concrete example of this. To build an IoT device, we need embedded engineers working on the low level. We need network engineers working on routers. And we need internet engineers working on browsers. Now, the harsh reality is, when you put it together, it doesn't work. As of this moment in time, if you attempt to connect a browser to a network device or an IoT device, it's actually impossible to do so securely in a usable fashion. And this is a bit of a shame, because if you go home and open your manuals that your ISP gives you, or the manuals that your IoT vendor gives you, this is pretty much exactly what they're asking you to do. So this is an example of insecure by design, and it is this way because we haven't pasted the cracks in between the individual elements. And so within Many Secured, we've tackled this problem head on. We've recently released the sort of like a public problem statement to gather some consensus around the problem. And we have, working within that community, some genuine experts who are doing the hard work of joining it all together and solving these system problems, which are absolutely key to making it work. But the cherry on the cake, or the real sort of like big ambition here is collaborative intelligence. So the ambition here, the big, bold ambition, is to try and create the collaborative infrastructure to allow systems to detect and respond to security threats at scale. Now, as you've probably heard within this conference, everyone says, AI is the answer, that AI is the panacea. So as someone with a PhD in the subject and has been working in AI for 30 years, I'll give you a dirty little secret, right? The algorithms are the easy bit. That's not what's hard. If you want to make this work, you need high-quality data at scale. And that is the thing that powers what we're trying to build within the Many Secured project. And fundamentally, what we're trying to build is a control system. It's got all the core elements of a control system. We've got a sensing element, find out what's going on the network. We've got a control element, kick things off if they're behaving badly. We've got the clever bit, the agents in the middle, that I'll skip over, but it could be AI, it could be policy, it could be stats, or it could be human-in-the-loop intelligence. I don't think that's the important thing. The bit above it is where I think the real interest is, and that's something we call D3, distributed device descriptors. And fundamentally, that is practically delivering on some of the things that have been talked about in this conference. It is a set of individual, secure, read cryptographic statements that actually describe the devices that you're working with and the inferences you're making on those devices. And so hopefully a very real example of how we actually build this together. And hopefully this is fairly too easy to understand in microcosm. But the real challenge is as we scale it up. Even in the consumer area, to solve this problem practically, you have to deal with multiple routers. Well, you'll have Wi-Fi boosters, you might have power line systems. But over and above that, and this is what IoT is all about, you've got these exotic networking capabilities like Zigbee, like Bluetooth, like LoRa. And the sort of like the challenge and the ambition of what we're trying to build in many secured is the defensive mechanisms, the control systems that can really span all of these layers. And as important as this is in the consumer sector, I think it's fairly obvious, and it doesn't require a massive leap of imagination to see how pertinent this is in automotive, industrial, smart cities, etc. So hopefully I've tried to give you some very concrete ideas of how we translate this collaboration into security into practical initiatives. In terms of where we are in Managed Secured, I mean, it started as a small, government-sponsored, R&D initiative with just 4 parties, but has already naturally grown into this self-supporting, self-sustaining special interest group. And my sort of key takeaway for you or call to action is if the type of things that I have talked about today are of interest and they are problems that you feel you need to help solving, please go to the website, there's a contact form, or feel free to contact me on my personal email, and indeed I'll be around for the rest of the afternoon and this evening. Thank you. Thank you.